Hey everyone, welcome back to Sketchaday. This is part 2 of my video on how to translate something from paper into digital. And I forgot to mention, this is Sketchaday. I'm Spencer, and I'm just going to show you kind of a little bit of my workflow of how I do this sometimes to take something that I've created on paper and put it onto my iPad Pro. So you don't have to use an iPad Pro if you want to take a picture and scan it in, or scan it in and put it on your computer and work with it that way. That is totally fine. You could use a Surface Pro or Android tablet or phone, whatever you want to do. The point is, we just need to capture what we did and transfer it. I'm going to be using Procreate. That's an app for the iPad Pro, but it's very similar to other drawing apps. So much of what I do, you can apply to your other programs. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have here a canvas that I created in Procreate, and it is 4,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, so 4 by 3 at 300 dpi. And what I'm going to do is tap this little wrench, and your drawing application might be a little different. I'm going to insert an image and take a photo. So now, as you can see, my camera, sorry about the glare there, but my camera is allowing me to take a picture essentially of this page. So holding this up, it's going to look a little bit weird for you on video, but you'll see what I'm doing here in just a sec. Okay, so now I've taken a picture and I can use this photo. So now it's dropped it into the canvas, and I just need to do a little bit of cleanup here. So in my menu, I'm going to adjust the hue, saturation, brightness of this image. Ideally what you want to do is be able to get a fairly even look on the page, but I'm just going to crank the brightness up like so, and let's see what else we can play with here. We can play with our curves, so I'll make those black lines a little bit darker. Right, pull that in. So now we have pretty decent, and you can play with this as much or as little as you want. As you can see on the left side, it's cleared up quite a bit. I'm going to zoom in here on my camera so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And once this is cleaned up a little bit, we can color over it. Sorry about that brain fart there. Okay. So I'm just going to erase on the right side kind of this area, which is a little bit of stuff that got caught in my drawing pad. Just erase that. Okay, and I can scale this or reposition it on the page if I want, like so. And in the last video I mentioned that we were going to do a little bit of cleanup here. So to do that, what I'm going to do is add a layer mask to this layer, and just make sure that we pick black, and the mask is going to hide, or in this case subdue, anything that is covered in black. So my mask looks like that, and on a new layer on top of that, I'm going to take my brush, and I do have custom brushes. I'm working on putting those together. They will be for sale on my website, and you can get them. Be patient. But on this new layer, I can come in and fix some stuff if I want to. And you know, because it is a different brush, it's gonna look different. But I would say just do your best to kind of replicate or duplicate what you had before. In fact, I can see I have a pretty big error here, right? Where this line and this line don't really make sense. Okay, so I just need to kind of clean that up a little bit. I've got notifications coming in, my apologies. Alright, so just gonna clean this up and try and make a little bit more sense, right, out of what's happening here. Because sometimes, you know, when you sketch, you're a little bit close and you miss things or whatever. So it's always nice to have the digital tool to then clean up. Not necessarily rely on it. I try to be conscious and aware and cognizant of what I'm doing, but sometimes you just mess up. So it's nice to have the ability to fix that as you go. You know, things like ellipses or line weights or what have you, other details. And I am working on a different layer, so I can turn this on or off, and you can see, which is also a good way to create iterations if you're doing iterative designs. Okay, if you have lines in your under sketch that you don't want to show up, you can clear those up as well. Even on my sketch that I started doing, or my lines rather, to clean up. Like so. I can fix some stuff, right? So pretty handy to be able to do that. All right. So there we have our dustpan and brush, and now we can add some color. So I don't know why I keep getting notifications, by the way. I turned on do not disturb, but it's still bugging me. Anyhow, so now I can quickly add some color, and you know, with designs I try to think of just a general color story. It's important though, however, this layer, layer 1, which is my sketch layer, I'm going to tap the N. This is Procreate, so there's a little letter N. If you tap that, it's going to give you options for your layer, so I can hit multiply, which is going to make everything that's white essentially transparent, and everything that's black is going to show through. Think of it that way. It's a bit more complicated, but think of it that way. So now I can come in, and with this gray, just kind of shade in, and I'm going to create an outline over the entire design here. And this is essentially my quick render color technique that I use most of the time when I draw. I'll use variations of this, but really this is how I sketch or draw. When I do this, in Procreate at least, I can do things like tap on a layer and hit select, and it selects all those pixels. So if I did it a little too dark, or I want to adjust color, it's easy to make that selection and work in a specific area. Because I love orange and red right now, I'm going to pick something that's kind of coral for a color, maybe a little bit more on the orange side. And I have on my brush my brush and dustpan, a couple color pop areas. So I'm working on a new layer. I always try to work on a new layer for a new color. Sometimes I forget, but that's typically how I work. And wherever there's a new part or feature, I can add that color to it. Just like so. And let's clean up here on the brush just a little bit. With Procreate's 2-finger tap will give you an undo function. So now that I have some base color in, let's actually add some orange to the strap as well. And maybe I won't go full orange. I'll make it, you know, look something more like a leather. Okay, so once you have a color you like, just kind of noodling around with that too long. We can just shade that in. I'm not too worried about coloring perfectly in my lines because this is a quick sketch, not a perfect rendering. And so now that I have my base colors in, I can start to add things like highlights and shadows. So with a nice big soft brush, I'm going to pick the pixels, right, that I used to define my entire, oops. Let's do that again. So select, go to my brush, and then because light never hits a surface perfectly, wow, lots of calendar invites. I'm just going to hit the middle with some white, and then we can deselect. Now you can see there's a little bit of a color variation on my sketch. It's kind of hard to see on camera here. But I will freeze frame on the finished version of this and also post it on my Instagram so you can see it. So there's my lights. Now I want to do some darks, and I've got this special round brush that I made, and so I'm just going to use that to get some shadowing in. here. And I'm not too worried about this being too gray right now because I can always adjust my opacity as needed. But wherever light changes direction, or sorry, where a surface changes direction, you want there to be some contrast, okay? And so it's a little bit more complicated with a cylindrical shape, but the idea is to have some value change where your surface changes. So I'm going to pick this layer, double or two finger tap, and now I can adjust the opacity and dial that in where I want to. I like to do things like adding a little bit of brown brush, nice soft airbrush, a little bit of airbrush to pump the shadow core on this handle, and anywhere that's round, for example. Kind of just bump the contrast in there where we may have some shadowing. Add some shadow under the bristles as well. Kind of like that, where the brush is captured in this handle. I'm going to make that really dark because you wouldn't get a lot of light back there. And just kind of airbrush that in. Now, on my strap as well. So layer above the strap, I'm going to pick that color, pick a value that's a little bit darker, kind of airbrush on this as well. Again, keeping it nice and loose. Okay, since this is a loose sketch. All right, let's also make, since we have a color story going here, this little blade to collect. In Procreate, if you draw and then wait for a second, you get what's called a quick line, okay? And that gives you a straight stroke. So just a little tip there. And go back to my round brush, and I'm just gonna kind of add a little bit of a highlight on that blade. And I'm going to go pure white, and above everything else on my page, I'm going to hit kind of the edge of the dustpan here. It's especially effective where you've got some decent contrast potential, if you will. Sometimes you do have to zoom in. I try not to zoom in too much, but sometimes you do have to zoom in. Get a little bit of highlight, shadow there. And maybe just, some reflection and artifacting on the top of my brush. If there's some sort of branding or logo, maybe that's on top here, for example. If I want to enhance any lines or edges, you can go back and forth, even though we did our line work with a Papermate Flare, just a regular pen. You can come in, clean some stuff up, add definition where it counts. And so you kind of got this nice blend of analog and digital. And let's add shadow to this. So I've gone to my very bottom layer, and I'm just going to quickly sketch in this area. Like so. I'm not too worried about filling in everything right now because I can just tap the color drag and use that to fill. Okay, so now that's filled in. If you don't want it solid black or full black, two finger tap on the layer, slide, and that'll adjust the opacity. So I've been really just digging light highlights and shadows lately. So I'm gonna go really light, and it's up to you, what you want to do. If you want to work on the bristles or whatever, you can do that too. So I can add some more lines here. if I want to add some call outs. This is dummy text, but I always say if you are doing a product concept, I just want to highlight how text can help like elevate your presentation, because essentially you're telling a story of what's happening. Sometimes that story can be told through words, and sometimes that story needs to be told through drawings. Okay, so like an explanatory drawing of the experience, for example, might be something I could add to this page to kind of help bolster my concept presentation. All right, so that's pretty much it. We've gone from paper to digital, adding some color, and now we have just a quick idea presentation sketch. And the cool thing is, because this is on layers, if I want to, change a color or modify something, I can always just pick that layer and modify it. So this is a really great way to come up with iterations of a design, specifically with color or other details that you can quickly change, that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with paper. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully you've gotten something out of this video. If you have, feel free to tell your friends, subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at sketchaday.com. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me, or leave a comment below in the video. I'll try my best to respond. But I hang out on Instagram most of the time these days. I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/sketchaday. And feel free to support by purchasing materials through the links in the description below the video. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time right here on Sketchaday.